Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DMV Confidential. I'm Kenzie Chase.
And I'm Jenny Gable.
And today we have a brand new episode for you. And so we want to talk to you about the October of 2002, which was a dark period for the DC and the surrounding areas. And what seemed to be seemingly random attacks soon became something much more sinister for investigators. This is actually going to be the first case of a serial killer that we're going to be covering. So we want to talk to you about the Beltway Snipers.
Yeah, Kenzie, so this is a case that has since gotten a lot of national attention, but it all began in October 2002, like you said, specifically on October 2nd, when a sniper bullet struck down a 55-year-old man in a parking lot, and this was in the Wheaton, Maryland area of Montgomery County. And by 10 o'clock the next morning, actually, 4 more people, just within like a few mile radius of each other, were killed in a similar attack, and this is according to the FBI. So over this period of time between October 2nd and October 8th, investigators noticed that 9 sniper attacks had taken place across the DC area.
Right, and we're actually going to go through some of that timeline, so bear with us because there's unfortunately quite a bit to cover here. So on October 2nd is when a 55-year-old man, James Martin, was shot in the back while crossing a parking lot at the Shoppers Food Warehouse in Wheaton, Maryland. And unfortunately, he died from those wounds. The next day, 5 more murders happened. So we actually have a 39-year-old man who was shot in the back while mowing the lawn at a dealership in Rockville. Then we have a 54-year-old man who was shot while pumping gas at a Mobile gas station while he was just pumping gas into his own taxi in the Silver Spring area. Next, we have a 34-year-old woman who was shot in the forehead while sitting on a bench outside Leisure World Plaza. Then, another one. A 25-year-old woman was shot in the back as she vacuumed out her van, also at a gas station, but this time in Kensington. Next, we have a victim that was killed, a 72-year-old Pascal Charlotte, who was walking along Georgia Avenue, and when he was shot in the chest on the night of October 3rd. So that happened all in one day. And it doesn't stop there. It continues on. So October 4th, there was a woman that was just wounded. She didn't die. But she was wounded. She was shot while loading her van in a Spotsylvania mall in a parking lot. At a Michael's store, if I'm correct.
Yeah, at like a Michael's parking lot.
She was shot in the lower back, and that bullet was later found inside her vehicle.
Yeah, and the crazy part about that, like you said, Kenzie, is that she did survive.
Yes. So that. We have a lot of people that did not survive their wounds, and then we have one woman so far who has. I mean, it doesn't stop there, Jenny, either. It keeps going. So yeah. October 7th, we have another one. We have this time, tragically, a 13-year-old boy was shot. This one actually has more to it as well, because this one wasn't like the others. There was actually something very unique about what investigators found when they investigated this crime.
Yeah, so they actually found a .223 shell casing, which matched some of the other shootings that had taken place in this similar type of sniper crime. They also found a blue ink pen, and the part that was interesting about this to me when we were going through the court documents is that they actually found a tarot card, and the tarot card that they found is the death tarot card, and written, as you can see on the top there, it says, "Call me God," in quotes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it right there on the top with that blue pen that we know that investigators also found. It says, "Call me God."
Yeah.
And then Jenny, also, you want to also just read what the little caption says on that note?
Yeah, so they also found this handwritten note as well. It said, "For you, Mr. Police, call me God," again in quotes, and then said, "Do not release to the press." I feel like just looking over these visuals, considering all that's happened, several people at this point have been killed in these random style attacks, just going about their daily lives. And then to kind of find a note like this, it had kind of more details written in it as well, specifically talking to the police, actually, saying, "Don't release to the press. We have tried to contact you to start negotiation." Then they go on to call police incompetent. in the note.
Yes, the note is very mocking.
Yes.
The note is also trying to like sort of hold a ransom as far as blaming investigators for these murders, saying you couldn't catch us, so now you have 5 more bodies to bury.
Yeah.
And also kind of going on to say, like, your children aren't safe.
Yeah, they say in the note, if stopping the killing is more important than catching us now, then you will accept our demands, which are non-negotiable. And then they ask for $10 million to be placed in a bank account.
Which we know investigators, I mean, they never do.
Yeah.
So they're putting up this, like, ransom to stop these killings in this bank account. Then they're also threatening the children. They're saying not even your children are safe.
Yeah, and that I feel like reading that just like genuinely just kind of made my skin crawl. I mean, like this situation in general is just horrible, but the note itself is so taunting to police.
And it doesn't stop there. I mean, again, this is a whole month of terror for investigators and for the community. So it continues on October 9th.
Yeah, so it was October 9th when a 53-year-old man was murdered in Manassas. He was also pumping gas, and he was shot in the back of the head. And then 2 days later, on October 11th, a man was shot dead in the Fredericksburg, Virginia area, also while pumping gas, and he was also shot in the back of the head. And then on October 14th, this was actually an FBI analyst, 47-year-old Linda Franklin. She was killed near Falls Church, Virginia, in a Home Depot parking lot on the night of October 14th. And she was also shot just one time in the head, and she died there. Yeah, and one witness actually did describe to police in this shooting in particular that they believe they saw a cream-colored van with like a malfunctioning taillight leaving the scene. So this kind of image of a van looking like that kind of circulated, but then investigators later said that wasn't like a credible tip on what the suspect car was like.
Right. And then October 19th, it continues with another person being injured. I mean, injured, not killed, but another person was injured outside of a steakhouse in Ashland, Virginia. And then finally, October 22nd, a bus driver was killed in Aspen Hill, Maryland.
Yes.
So, I mean, just looking at this timeline, these people are
just going
all
about their
over
daily
the DMV
lives.
area.
Yeah. And I believe at the conclusion of this, 10 people were killed and 3 others were injured in these random attacks all across, DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
So with all these murders, with all these injuries, with all these shootings happening in public spots, it should come as no surprise that the entire area was just terrified. So the attacks were soon all linked together. What first started off, again, seemingly random, the Montgomery County ones, investigators say they happened pretty close to each other, so I think they were able to sort of determine that those were, I don't know, like connected
they were
early
within
on.
a few miles apart.
Correct. But soon they were able to determine that all of these shootings were connected to each other. They collected ballistic evidence and other evidence from the scene that matched other areas and other spots of the DMV area that tied this all to the same suspect or suspects.
Yeah, most of the ballistic evidence from most of the scenes, again, Kenzie, did match that .2238, I believe, caliber from the weapon. So at this point, it's kind of a multi-level investigation from a bunch of different agencies joining in. It was led by, Montgomery County Police, but then also FBI, Baltimore, and Washington.
I mean,
field
everyone got
offices,
involved in this. This is
ATF,
a big case.
The U.S. Marshals, yeah.
Right, and this, just to paint a picture of this in general, 2001 is not, it's only shortly after, 2002 is only shortly after 2001. And when you think about 2001, we obviously had the 9/11 terror attacks and all of that stuff that was happening. So it's not that's two tragic things happening within a year, of each other. And I think that's also just important of just the timeline of when this is happening. I mean, obviously this is October 2002 and 9/11 happened in September 2001. But even still, this is all a new climate for people.
As someone who kind of grew up in, Maryland and the D.C. area, Growing up, I remember my parents mentioning this case specifically because they lived in the area at this time this took place, and kind of the fear that they felt because, again, it was just people just going about their daily tasks and there was no real answers about what was going on.
Yeah, Jenny, and I can't imagine, like, your parents growing up in this area. Like, I didn't grow up in this area, but
yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean, that must have been so scary, like, leaving your house.
Yeah, like, just to go get gas, go to the store.
These are random,
yeah,
seemingly random places. I mean, it's not like they didn't all happen at a gas station even. I mean, a lot of them happened at a gas station, but not all of them.
Like
a lot
shopping
of them happened
centers.
at a Home Depot, at a Michael's, where
Places
people, like, do crafts.
Where
like,
you wouldn't expect something like this to take place. So, like, I can imagine back then, I can't imagine if something like that were to happen now. Like, I would be terrified to leave my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, rightfully so. I mean, you just don't know where they're going to strike.
Yeah. And so at this point, all these agencies are kind of investigating. Maryland State Police, Secret Service, the FBI opened this nationwide tip line on October 10th for any tips to come in on this case, on what was going on. And, they did speak to some witnesses at the scenes of these shootings, but the only, like, common denominator between the witness accounts is that they believed the suspect was a male.
Yeah, there were varying descriptions of, like, the vehicle. There were varying descriptions of what the suspect looked like, what led up to it. But they decided they came on that it was a male suspect, at least.
Yeah, so at this point, they're continuing to investigate, and that's when they kind of lead to they get this tip that really leads to this big break in the case. So, and it ironically kind of came from the suspects themselves.
So the break in the case, like you mentioned, Jenny, comes from one of the suspects themselves. It kind of sets this whole thing in motion. The investigators essentially get a phone call from someone claiming to be the sniper, saying that he also killed two women back in Alabama during, like, a robbery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that call came in on October 17th. So again, this has been going on for a couple weeks at this point. And they said that they killed these two women during the robbery of a liquor store in Montgomery, Alabama, a month before. So, like, September time period. Actually, police were able to kind of link this to this crime that had taken place, but only one of the women had actually died.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of what starts the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is they get this phone call, and I mean, I think it's part of, like, I've seen, like, true crime shows that show this, that, like, they like to be involved. Like, some serial killers.
It's kind of like
killers,
a tease, right?
Yeah, like to be involved. They like to be close to the case. So whether that's, them being the source to investigators or trying to tip them off in one direction. I mean, we see this in, like, multiple serial killers. There's, like, a story in New York that I can think of where he's helping them search for the bodies and stuff like that.
It's like because when I heard that initially, I was like, why would they kind of snitch on themselves? But I guess it's kind of like teasing the investigators, kind of manipulating.
Yeah, it's
maybe
kind of
trying to send them in,
either send them in the wrong direction or even just kind of rub it in their face.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's like I don't know, to me that's very narcissistic, like trying to, like, rub it in their face, like, you can't catch me. I mean, we know that, we've seen that note, the one that's like, you guys can't catch me, now you have more bodies to bury. Like,
yeah, and I believe they left more similar notes like that at other scenes as well, which I was a little bit confused about how, they were able to leave these notes in the first place.
We were talking about that.
If
one consensus that investigators were able to determine from this is that the snipers appeared to be shooting from a large range, like from a long distance.
Like 50 yards in a lot of cases.
It's not like they were doing it at point blank, so we're curious about how investigators found these notes. Did someone go back and leave the note for investigators? Did someone just, like, throw it out of their car as they were driving and investigators found it, like, in the general vicinity? I'm curious. We reached out to the FBI to see if there was anyone that would be willing to talk about it. We didn't hear back in time for this episode, but I am curious to see, like, how that played out. Did they just canvass the whole area and they found it, or was it, like, laying by the body?
Yeah, because they were able to, like you said, Kenzie, figure out that they weren't super close in the range that they were shooting from. So I was I know we were both confused about how that even happened.
Yeah. So that was one of the things, just even, like, how are they getting this evidence? What are the snipers' involvement? Like, they're obviously reaching out to investigators. They're kind of mocking them. They're teasing them. They're
trying to extort money from them and making demands for these
yeah,
things.
very cocky, I think. Very cocky that they're not going to be caught, or that
yeah.
I don't know. What,
I believe,
trying to just instigate more?
I believe in the one note that we had mentioned earlier that was found with the tarot card, they actually mentioned specific investigators as well, and like we're talking about the different agencies, called them kind of incompetent. So it goes back to that.
Yeah. So back to this break in the case. Again, they call and they say that they're the sniper and that they also murdered these 2 women back in Alabama.
Yeah, and that's when investigators kind of realized that they had fingerprint and ballistic evidence available from that case. So with that evidence that they were able to collect, they were able to find a match from a magazine that was actually dropped at one of the shooting crime scenes. And that evidence actually matched the fingerprints of someone named Lee Boyd Malvo.
Yes. So they were able to determine that maybe that exact thing where he killed 2 women happened, but there was a report of a robbery at an ABC store in Alabama in on September 21st. And so like a month before they get this phone call. And in that robbery, 2 women were shot. 1 was killed. And from that evidence they collected, there was ballistic evidence. And there was further evidence that actually they were able to tie back down to a person, to a suspect.
Yeah.
And so, that's where the name Lee Malvoy comes from.
Yeah, and Lee actually had a previous arrest as well in Washington State. So from this point, investigators really kind of have this suspect. And the arrest record also provided another lead to a different person, which mentioned a man named John Allen Muhammad. And one of the FBI agents from Tacoma actually recognized that name from a tip that had been called into the office. So here now they have 2 suspects, this Lee Boyd Malvo and this John Allen Muhammad in this case. Yeah,
and I just think this whole thing is just, I mean, absolutely crazy. How they even get to these suspects is like someone calls in and says that they're the sniper, and then investigators look into it, and they're like, there was a similar case in Alabama. So then obviously
they sparked this whole...
right. So they start looking into it, and they were able to kind of work with, again, this is like a massive agencies, like across the board working with each other. And they were able to find out that Muhammad also had a restraining order against his ex-wife. And just a whole bunch of things that were kind of pointing them into the direction of these 2 suspects, which we didn't even know there were 2 suspects at first, right, Jenny? I mean, originally we just thought it would maybe just be 1.
A lot of people were just saying, oh, it's a male, like it's a man, but they didn't have any other real information. They just knew that the ballistic evidence from the shootings kind of matched most of the, I believe in some it was maybe not recoverable, but they all pretty much matched, so they knew it was connected, but they, didn't really have much else. And then, as you said, Kenzie, they're able to see that he was actually, ATF agents learned that Muhammad actually had a .223 rifle in his possession, and he had that restraining order to stay away from his ex-wife there. And they also, upon searching the FBI criminal records database, found that Muhammad had actually registered a blue Chevy Caprice with a license plate for New Jersey. So now they kind of had this vehicle to kind of search for, and they blasted images of that out to the media to try to gauge, where they might be.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of how they start, like, massive, like, I mean, this is already, I think, making national news when you have 10 people that are killed, basically, in, like, such a short period of time. But then they start looking at, like, massive searches and actually start looking into vehicles registered under their names and all this stuff to try to kind of get more of a read of where they are. I mean, they've also, like, been to so many different areas in the DMV. So, like, when you think about it, they've been to Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. all in, like, a short period of time.
All within, like, days apart of each other. And I think the big part about getting the vehicle registered and the plate number is that, like, as we said earlier, at this point, some witnesses had said they'd seen, like, a white van, a cream-colored van, but that wasn't ever proven. There was kind of different accounts. Nothing seemed to really match. But now at this point, they have this specific vehicle with the tag number that is traced to this person who's now a suspect.
Right. And so then they take that vehicle and they send it anywhere that they can. So investigators come and they have all this information, and finally, on October 23rd, around 11:45, they actually get a hit on the vehicle. The vehicle that has been spread far and wide actually gets spotted at a rest stop. And so that's when investigators, this is their shot. I mean, they swarm this vehicle. So on the morning of October 24th, everyone's around this vehicle, making sure there's no possible way for these two people to escape. And sure enough, they arrest Lee Malvo and John Muhammad while they were sleeping in their vehicle.
Yeah, so the two were sleeping in their vehicle, like you said, Kenzie, just off of I-70 in Maryland. And, you know, within the hour, law enforcement had swarmed this car, and they were able to arrest both of them without a struggle. But when they arrested them in the vehicle, the blue car, they were able to discover a bunch of evidence inside the car that was honestly, you know, very disturbing and honestly just shocking. I know us, like, looking through the court documents and just looking at these images here.
So here's the vehicle. Here's the vehicle that's popping up right now. Here is the blue Chevy that we know that they were driving. Here's the New Jersey plates.
And you can see,
you see this. Yeah, you see that little hole that was right in between. Yeah. Investigators believe that that is where they put the sniper through, the gun through.
Yeah. So they were able, it was kind of as they described, like a sniper's nest, a rolling sniper's nest. So they were using this vehicle to drive around to different areas, and somebody was kind of, you know, I believe they had moved the aluminum from the passenger compartment. So basically someone was allowed to go into the trunk while still inside the car and kind of shoot people through above that little license plate hole that you can see in the images without being detected. And then I mean,
that's so scary. I mean, imagine just all of a sudden seeing like a gun coming right out from that little hole right there in the, I mean, that's just enough to fit, you know, the butt of the gun.
Yeah, and you can see the gun there that was found as well inside the car. They also found other things like a digital voice recorder that was used by them to make extortion demands to police. And they also found maps, walkie-talkies, like a bunch of different items kind of planning what they were doing, including a laptop that investigators said was stolen from one of the victims previously. And I believe it had maps of shooting sites and getaway routes for them to take from the different crime scenes.
Well, and they also, throughout this evidence, were able to determine that these two suspects were also connected to multiple other victims from across the country in months prior. Yeah. So there's obviously this giant thing going on in DC area. There's obviously these shootings, all this stuff happening in the DC area, 10 people shot, 3 people injured at least. But there was also evidence that ties them to non-related shootings, to shootings from around the country.
Yeah, with several other people killed.
Right. So these are mass serial killers targeted DC area in this specific way, but they weren't isolated to this area. I just think that the difference is that the other ones seemed more like isolated incidents versus this seemed like they were intentionally targeting this area.
Yeah, intentionally targeting kind of random people.
And we'll get into why, that was why they might have chose this area as their target.
Yeah, because I know when I initially heard about this, is, you know, my first thought is why would there's no way to rationalize it. But
yeah, usually serial killers, when you hear about them, they go after a specific type.
Specific type,
you know,
of
like
person
a specific type of victim, whether it's gender, race, you know, age. There's like different reasons why they pick their victims, and this one just seemed random.
People from all across the board were really not safe.
Right,
during
you didn't
this time
know who was going to be a target. I mean, we have a 13-year-old boy as one of the victims,
just walking into school. On a weekday morning.
I know, just it's crazy to me, but we'll definitely talk more about all the little nuances about this case, and just it's shocking. I mean, a 13-year-old boy is just killed on his way to not killed. He's wounded. Yes. Wounded on the way to school. And just varying ages of people that were shot, injured, killed.
I think it really just goes to show back to, again, during this time, if you lived in this area, you really didn't have that sense of security, you know, leaving your house, that everything was going to be okay. But with all this evidence that they collected, you know, including the rifle itself, the recorders, the laptop, maps, walkie-talkies, just everything, they were able to charge both Malvo and Muhammad in connection with this case.
Right. So, and that's they do end up charging the two in this case. And I think that is just such a relief for the community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you think about it, like, this has been all in a month.
Mm-hmm.
That is, like, such a tragic amount of loss in this area. I mean, like you mentioned, Jenny, your parents went through this. I mean, your parents were in this area around the time, and, I mean, I'm sure they were scared. I'm sure they were like, can we go out and get groceries? Can we go, our water heater's broken. Can we even go out to go look for water heaters?
Yeah. I know when I've talked to different people about this case that lived here at the time, they all kind of say the same thing. Like, they right away are like, I remember that case. Like, at that time period, I felt scared, to leave my house, really, because you can imagine, like, there was not much information on exactly who was being targeted and why. It just all seemed very random.
Yeah.
So being out in public, doing normal tasks, going to work was, I can imagine, a very scary thing.
Right. And so we go through all this information, and then finally, they are eventually convicted.
Mm-hmm.
Malvo pleads guilty, and then John Muhammad, actually goes to trial. And he actually represents himself.
Yeah, he was
trial.
his own counsel.
And they are found convicted, so I feel comfortable saying this, but kind of playing into this, like, cocky mentality. I mean, they were leaving notes, teasing investigators, and I think the fact that he represented himself in court just further shows that he was very confident in himself and his ability to convince the masses of his innocence.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like you never really see that. And I know this case was a very big deal and got a lot of attention. The fact that he didn't have representation, like, he represented himself.
Yeah.
Was just crazy to me. I don't know, like you said, Kenzie, the mindset behind doing that.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the case that's also, I mean, there's so many parts of this case that I think I have so many questions about. Why did this happen? The main part, and the why is actually extremely interesting, and I think we're just going to discuss it because, according to the AP, according to the Associated Press, the reason why he seemingly targeted this area was because his ex-wife lived in this area. The ex-wife that had a restraining order against him.
Yeah, so he actually didn't have custody of his kids, I believe. And, it was reported by them that from trial testimony indicated that they kind of planned out these attacks so that way they could potentially kill her and it would look random because they were killing people at random. So then that way it couldn't be traced back to him. So he could regain custody of his children.
Yeah, and that is just insane to me. I mean, first of all, I don't know what the logic was in that because the investigators are obviously going to try to track you down.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you killed your ex-wife and made it look random, you also killed all these other people.
There was other crimes involved as well.
So, like, they're going to track you down. Like, they're not going to stop. I don't understand the logic of, oh, well, I'm just going to kill my ex-wife so that it looks random and it won't be tied back to me. They're going to tie you to all of it because you created a mass amount of scare and fear and killed multiple people in a short span.
Yeah, I think with cases like this, it's really interesting to me kind of the psychology behind the people that do things like this because, like, as people, we try to rationalize or understand what logical, like, it doesn't logically make any sense, and you feel like it's just confusing, but I guess that was his mindset, was that he could re-get custody of his children. That's something that, like, the trial testimony kind of indicated, like, he wanted his children back.
Yeah. Something else I want to talk about, we haven't even talked about the age at all.
Mm-hmm.
But while John Muhammad is an adult, 50-something, am I correct on that?
I believe he was in his 40s.
40s?
Late 30s.
Okay. He is an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But Lee Malvo is not.
Yeah.
He was 17 when all of this happened.
Mm-hmm.
17, Jenny?
Yeah.
I mean, a serial killer in D.C. area, 17 years old.
You're just of high school age.
Yeah.
At that point. But yeah.
I mean, and when we go back to even like the Alabama robbery that happened, that, you know, one woman died and another woman was hurt. They also like created like a composite sketch of the person, and they kind of were the ones that like traced it back to Lee Malvo as the like suspect in it. They like created like this composite sketch, and I mean, it's a 17-year-old boy that's doing all this. So like, not only was he responsible for this case,
But
like
several others.
but like in different parts of the world, country, excuse me. I mean world, but country.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes and touches on, you know, these two people, they're so far apart in age. How are they connected to each other? And what does kind of the motive between them to do something like this?
We'll discuss a little bit more about that in just coming up. But I mean, I think it just goes to show that like Malvo and Muhammad, I mean, luckily they were both found guilty. And I think that kind of, I mean, I don't know, were your parents around to like determine if that like brought any closure to the community? I mean, is there such a thing when there's such a mass amount of death?
I think that people, you know, from talking to them and other people that were here at the time, definitely felt better that they were arrested, like that sense of safety back. But I think something like this is really, you know, just leaves a hole in the community. Yeah. Because so many lives, innocent lives, just taken. But with that, actually, they were both sentenced to life without parole, and Muhammad he actually received the death penalty and was executed in Virginia on November 10th, 2009.
Yeah. So he actually did receive the death penalty, which is not very common. I mean, here's a photo of him now. Here's him during sentencing when he was sentenced to death. And we're not gonna get into whether that was a good call or not, but I think, you know, the community themselves were at the very least never wanting him to return back to society.
Yeah, and I believe that trial, I know we were talking about this earlier, actually took place in Chesapeake, Virginia?
So a lot of the stuff took place in the Hampton Roads area. I don't know if John Muhammad's took place in Chesapeake. I know
just Lee.
I know Lee's did. And the reason for that was because of the impact that this had on this community and the sheer fact that they were struggling to find an unbiased jury.
Which I can imagine. You know, everybody's heard about this at this point. How are you going to have people from this area not have some sort of bias against them in this case? So
originally, I think they were supposed to have a trial in Fairfax County, and then it eventually got moved to the Hampton Roads area just because they wanted, you know, everyone, serial killer or not, you know, guilty or not, everyone deserves their due process, and they wanted to give them as fair a trial as they could. And so they sent them over to an area not that far, really. I mean, I'm sure people in Hampton Roads knew about this case.
But it's a bit more removed from the immediate, like,
they
DMV
were a bit more removed
area.
Since it wasn't their direct area, fearing for their life every time they left the door. So, but even still, I mean, I don't think it really helped them as far as they were both convicted.
Yeah.
And whereas Lee got life without parole, John Muhammad was sentenced to death, and he was executed back in 2009. So now we're going to kind of go in a little bit into where we're at today. So I think the big question is, how do these two people know each other?
Yeah, so kind of like how we were talking about earlier, that's something that I was just wondering about hearing, like when I was hearing about this, because I'm like, okay, these two people were involved in this, they were both convicted, but what is the connection there? There's such a big age gap. But it actually, Lee was actually, when he was 15 years old, he was from Jamaica, and he was sent to live in Antigua, and that's when he met Muhammad, actually. That's according to AP News. But what's interesting to me is his mother actually was interviewed by investigators kind of around the time period that this was going on. And in an interview dated from October 23rd, 2002, she said that she had actually introduced her son Lee to John Muhammad.
Which is interesting because court documents actually say like, it's a slightly different
Yeah.
narrative. Court documents say that the two had come here illegally, and then they were kind of, one of them was using, like, the mother was using, like, a fake identity, basically, to get by.
Like the mother and the son had come
Yeah,
here.
they had come here illegally, and then Lee Malvo, actually, like, ran away. So that's what it is, according to court documents. He ran away and ended up in Washington area, and then he met John.
So that's the part that was interesting to me, is that she said that she had introduced them, and that's according to, like,
Yeah, that's
her
a big
interview.
difference. Whether did your son run away, or did you introduce him to this man?
But she did say that her relationship with John Muhammad, was platonic, and that she did believe that he had kind of kidnapped her son Lee, and that she was trying to get him back but wasn't successful.
Yeah, so I'm almost curious if maybe they had met, and then she moved down, because she was living in Florida area. She was working as, like, at Red Lobster in the area, and then he ran away. So I almost wonder if the timeline is that they met, she moved down there, and then he ran away to go back up to him, or if he ran away and then met him up there separately, and she didn't introduce the two. I don't know what that looks like.
I feel like the part, with how they met, it, like, initially is very murky to me, still trying to kind of understand.
Regardless,
there's, like,
I don't
different
really
accounts.
think that,
Yeah, but she said she tried to get her son back, Lee back, in January 2002. Her attorney had contacted John Muhammad.
At one point, she had even moved
to,
up to Washington area, and something along the lines of, like, she made contact back with Lee, and then they tried to go up to Canada, and then they both got detained by like the border control up there, and then they got out, and that's when he, like, went back to John Muhammad, and something along the lines. It's kind of confusing how the court documents lay it out, but
yeah, I believe the mother had also said that one of the last times she had seen her son was coincidentally on a bus, like a city bus, where she saw him with John Muhammad. So it's just definitely a very, very weird situation. But Muhammad, specifically talking about him, he was actually a former military soldier. He was stationed in Washington.
Yeah, so that's why
State.
he was in the area. That explains his being stationed in the area. He was former military. Okay, and now you just kind of want to go off a little bit on a tangent about, like, there was one court document in everything we reviewed. I mean, there's a lot. There's like 214 pages of court documents, and we're not obviously going to have time to go through every single one of them. But there was one person that was kind of describing their relationship. So it was like a third party that was kind of describing how Lee and John met, how they interacted with each other, kind of describing their personalities, if you will.
Yeah.
And when this person was describing these two personalities, they first said that, John was very much first like a father figure, but their dynamic was very different. He was very militant, very militant structure, very military, hard, like disciplinary figure.
Yeah, I think they said, like, he was, like, militaristic in the way that he kind of spoke to Lee, and, like, Lee would kind of do whatever John like instructed him to do.
And he would they would work out like excessively.
Yeah.
He would punish Lee like with push-ups and like fitness things to like, I don't know, like encourage his, I don't know, like punish him.
I said he the court documents said he definitely like physically developed Lee. Again, he's like a young, kind of, I mean, really impressionable like teenager. He's a teenager, and this person is kind of like seemingly now in this father figure position to him, so there's definitely a power dynamic in the relationship.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and then they go on to like describe the fact that Lee and John, they would also like even play games like I don't know, Halo, things like that, and they always liked the sniper feature. And I was like, that's kind of a random thing to mention, but for the sheer fact of the fact that this case is about the Beltway Snipers, I mean, I think anything is relevant when it comes to that subject. They also went shooting together, and John would always brag about his time. I mean, I don't actually know if this is true.
This is all
accurate,
this other person's account.
That he would brag about being former Delta Force and a former Army Ranger, according to this source in these documents. We don't know if he actually was Delta Force or anything like that, but he also said that John wasn't like very much of a good shot. But Lee Malvo was. He was a good shot. He had skills with a gun.
Which might indicate that he was possibly the one.
According to the source, it was under his belief that it was Lee that was most likely the one shooting the sniper, and that John Muhammad was probably the spotter.
Well, didn't John Muhammad actually had a nickname
Yes,
for Lee as
yes.
well, which was
I mean,
very, very striking.
Yeah, his nickname for Lee was Sniper.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of very disturbing aspects of, you know, their dynamic, you know, this power dynamic that's seemingly going on. John Muhammad is really kind of pushing Lee to be like, you know, court documents describe them both as like extremely fit. And it's kind of just this struggle of him having this big influence over Lee Malvo in this situation.
I don't know, like, and it's so hard because I want to actually talk about, you know, there's obviously this power dynamic, and I don't know how it got to this point. The same source also describes that Lee was a very angry person, and that John always had a sense of resentment for his ex-wife, and every time he talked about her, it was always with malice. And at some point saying he was going to fix her, whatever that means. I mean...
Yeah. I also saw court documents had mentioned that, like, John Muhammad himself had expressed a lot of, like, quote, anti-American, like, sentiments and things of that nature as well.
When we talk about 9/11, for example, he said that America deserved it. So very, like, anti this country, very much, like, just angry in general, an angry person. And
he kind of had this, like, negative attitude towards authority, which is what investigators described as well. Which is just, again, interesting to me when we're talking about the power dynamic here.
And we're also talking about the fact that he's military. He was a former military. So, I mean, you have a power dynamic. I wonder, I don't know, maybe he didn't like his experience in the military and that had something to do with how he just, like, strayed so far down this. I have no idea. But
there was actually one other thing that I meant to mention as well, and this is according to the court documents that we looked through. It said between February 2002 and June 2002, so this would have been previously before this took place. He apparently, who also went by Williams to some, showed a silencer to a witness, and he had identification under the alias John Muhammad Weekly from Jamaica, the Bahamas, and other countries, and Lee also had identification under an alias for these other countries. He also had told the witness that he planned to kill a police officer and then bomb the funeral. So there's just some people coming to investigators saying that, you know, he has said some disturbing things and is kind of mixed up in things that are definitely red flags.
So we obviously know what happened to John. He was executed in 2009. But what about Lee? I mean, Lee himself was a teenager when this all happened. He was technically a juvenile.
Yeah. So he was a minor, you know, he was 17 at the time of the shootings. I believe now he's 39 or 40 years old. But, you know, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But then actually there was a series of Supreme Court rulings and changes in Virginia and Maryland law where he was convicted in both states for the shootings that took place, which actually gave him the opportunity to seek parole after he had been in prison for nearly 20 years. So the Supreme Court ruling was basically that I believe minors can't get sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, which he was back then.
Yeah, mandatory life in prison. Right.
So now it's kind of to this point, well, does he get resentenced? You know, in this case, he's been in prison for all these years. It was actually, I believe, August 2022, a Virginia parole board ruled that, you know, he could not get parole at this time. He should serve more of his sentence before being, if that would even be considered, just because of...
Because he was still considered a risk to the community.
Because of the significance of what had taken place. And, you know.
I mean... Yeah. And I can't say the courts, like, I'm sure people, like, there was even people that were interviewed that were victims or had family, and they said that, like, he's where he belongs. He needs to stay behind bars, and the community, like, he's not ready to be released to the community. I don't know if the fact that your parents don't remember it, Jenny, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to forget, but could you imagine that going through that and then suddenly finding out that they're just like on the street again?
Yeah, I think it really sparked this big discussion over rehabilitation for like minors in the prison, like who enter the prison system as like teenagers and things like that.
Yeah.
But again, it also goes back to, like you said, Kenzie, this was, you know, a serial killer case. Like there were several people, innocent people that were killed in this case. Actually, for, you know, in Maryland, a court ruled in 2022 that he should be resentenced for his crimes, but a judge actually indefinitely postponed that because he was supposed to appear in court, I believe in person, and Virginia didn't release him because they believed he was too dangerous to even be released, like periodically for that.
So I mean, whether you love it or hate it, he's currently in prison, and we don't expect him to be released anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, this is our first serial killer that we've had to cover, or that we've covered before. And I mean, when usually the stories that we cover are like isolated incidents, and so we can usually talk a little bit more about the victim. And I think it's hard for us to be able to talk about all the victims, but I just want to talk about it anyway. I mean, these are people that range from 13 years old to 76?
Yeah, in their 70s, yeah.
In their 70s, and it's terrible. I mean, it's terrible that this happened, and it's terrible that they had to go through this. And I hope they feel, the ones that like are the family members and the people around them, I hope they feel like there's some sort of justice, and that they can sleep at night knowing that the persons that did this were convicted, and that they had their justice and their time in trial in court. So if you guys want to listen to more of these kind of cases, if you guys want to follow us as we dive in to true crime across the DMV area,
just tune in every week. We're going to be doing more episodes like this here.
Yeah, tune in every week, and we will see you next time.